I turned 42 last week. For the first time in years, I didn't want a party, a cake, or even a dinner out. I just wanted peace. But in our house, peace was the one thing we never had anymore. Emily, my wife, had been distant for months. At first I told myself it was stress. Her job, her friends. Maybe I'd change too. But when you live with someone long enough, you can feel it. The slow, invisible retreat of affection. You feel it in how they close the door, how they answer your questions with one-word replies, how the laughter disappears from the walls. That morning I woke up to silence. No happy birthday. No smile. Just the faint hum of her hairdryer behind the bathroom door. I sat on the edge of the bed watching my hands, wondering when love had turned into this mutual politeness between two people who used to be inseparable. When she came out, she was already dressed to leave. Tight dress, perfect makeup, perfume too heavy for the morning. Going somewhere? I asked, trying to sound casual. She didn't look at me. Lunch with the girls. You'll be fine, right? I smiled, but it wasn't real. Yeah, sure, it's my birthday after all. She froze for half a second, just enough to remember, but didn't apologize. We'll celebrate later. Don't be dramatic. And then she left. I sat in that quiet house for hours. My phone buzzed. A few messages from friends, a call from my brother, but not a single text from her. Around noon, I decided to stop waiting. I got in my truck, drove to the diner by the highway, and ordered a burger. The waitress, an older lady with kind eyes, said, "You look like you lost something." I told her I probably had. When I got back home, her car was in the driveway. I almost felt relief. Maybe she'd changed her mind, maybe she wanted to make things right. But the moment I walked in, I knew something was off. She was sitting at the table, papers neatly stacked beside a pen. Her expression was calm. Too calm. "What's this?" I asked. She looked up, her eyes cold. "Divorce papers." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. "On my birthday?" Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. "It's just a date, Lucas. You'll survive." I took a slow breath. "Why now?" "Because I'm tired. Because you make everything heavier than it needs to be. I want out." Her words were clean, practiced, like she'd rehearsed them in front of a mirror. There was no anger, no guilt, just detachment. I nodded slowly, staring at the pen. "And the birthday message?" She shrugged. "You'll be fine. Sign the papers, be a man." Something in me went quiet then. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from final acceptance. I picked up the pen, signed my name, and slid the papers back across the table. Her eyes flickered, surprised. Maybe she expected a fight, or tears, or some desperate speech about love and forgiveness. But I had none left to give. She said, "That's it? No arguments, no begging?" I looked at her and smiled faintly. "You wanted a show, Emily, but not every man performs when he's breaking." For a moment, she looked uncertain, like she'd miscalculated the ending of her own script. Then she stood, grabbed the papers, and walked upstairs without a word. That night, I didn't hear her footsteps come back down. She didn't text. She didn't speak. The silence was deafening, but it was also strangely liberating. Around midnight, I poured myself a drink, sat on the porch, and stared at the stars. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt empty, yes, but honest. And then my phone buzzed. It was her. Just one line. "You didn't even ask me why." I read it twice, then 3 times. And instead of replying, I laughed softly to myself. Because the truth was, I already knew. When love dies, the reason never matters as much as the silence that follows. I put the phone down, finished my drink, and let the night close in. The next morning, sunlight poured through the blinds like nothing had happened. I could hear birds outside, a truck down the street, and for a second I thought maybe it had all been a bad dream. Then I saw the empty space in the closet where her clothes used to be. Half the hangers were gone, and the dresser drawers looked hollow. A perfume bottle sat on the counter, the cap missing, like she'd left a trace of herself just to prove she once existed here. I made coffee and stared at my reflection in the kitchen window. My face looked calm, but my hands were shaking. Not from sadness, more from disbelief that something so big could end so quietly. Her message still sat on my phone. You didn't even ask me why. I didn't know if I owed her an answer or if she owed me one. But curiosity or maybe pride made me type back, "You'd already decided. Why pretend there's a reason I could fix?" She didn't reply. Hours passed. I cleaned, folded laundry, tried to distract myself, but every sound, the washing machine, the creak of the floor, echoed differently now. The house had an emptiness you could almost touch. By evening, another message arrived. "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you." I stared at it for a long time, trying to understand. Then another followed. "I left because you stopped needing me." That line hit differently, because part of me knew she wasn't entirely wrong. Somewhere between paying bills, working overtime, and surviving routine, I'd turned quiet. I'd stopped asking for help, stopped arguing, stopped showing pain. I thought I was protecting us from more fights, but maybe what she saw was a man who no longer cared. Still, I couldn't find sympathy for the way she'd chosen to leave. Some truths lose their meaning when delivered too late. I typed back, "Needing someone isn't the same as depending on them. I just thought love didn't require proof every day." She saw it but never responded. That night I slept on the couch, not because the bed reminded me of her, but because it reminded me of the silence we shared. It was easier to face the emptiness in a new place than revisit the one we built together. Days passed like that, quiet, steady, almost peaceful. Friends called, my brother dropped by with beer trying to get me to talk. I told them I was fine, and maybe for once I meant it. Then a week later, a letter arrived. Not from her lawyer, just a small envelope with her handwriting. Inside was a birthday card, the same one she'd probably bought before she decided to end everything. The front said, "To my favorite person." Inside, in her neat handwriting, "You were never the problem. You were just too still for a world that never stops running." I folded the card, set it aside, and felt an odd mix of grief and relief. Because buried in that single sentence was the truth about both of us. She needed noise to feel alive, and I needed quiet to survive. A few weeks later, I saw her name flash on my phone again. Not a message, just a bank notification. She'd withdrawn her share of the joint account. That was her final goodbye. No words, no explanations, just numbers and closure. That evening, I went to the same diner where I'd eaten alone on my birthday. The waitress recognized me. "Rough week, huh?" she said gently. I nodded. "You could say that." She poured coffee and smiled. "You look lighter, though, like a man who finally put something down." I smiled back. Maybe I did. When I left, the sky was a deep orange fading into blue. I rolled down the truck window and let the wind hit my face. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost, but what I'd learned. Some endings don't need villains. Sometimes two people just run out of the same story. That night, as I sat on the porch again, I thought about her text. "You didn't even ask me why." And I realized I finally had my answer. Because when someone tells you to be a man as they walk away, what they really mean is, stay silent so I can be the loud one. But real strength isn't silence. It's understanding that not every battle deserves your noise. I finished my drink, looked at the stars again, and smiled. I'd signed quietly, yes, but not out of weakness. I'd signed because peace, even painful peace, was worth more than performance. And as the night deepened, I whispered to myself the only truth that mattered. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is nothing at all.